Welcome to these tutorials on the nervous system. Our aim in these tutorials is to build a foundation of knowledge of the nervous system. So we're going to be looking at many labels, different parts. We are going to be discussing the basic function of the nervous system, but it is very much an overview. There's a lot more information in how the nervous system works and things like that, but what we want to try and do is get that basic sort of understanding in place. So we're going to be essentially looking at four things. We're going to look at the basic structure of the nervous system and understand the basic function of the nervous system. Now, those first two, we're going to sort of, there's four parts to those two. So we're going to start by looking at the structure, then we're going to drop into the function, then we're going to drop back to the structure again, and then we're going to drop back to the function again. So we're going to sort of flip between those two. Then we're going to look in the final lesson, we're going to look at the role of myelination and the role of neuroplasticity, which is then starting to expand on the function of the nervous system. And again, we'll be able to look at some of the structures within that function. The basic structure of the nervous system, and in some respects, the function of the nervous system, is encapsulated in this diagram here. So if we just go through the basic structures, so as you can see here, we've got CNS and PNS. Now I'm going to be expanding on this as we go throughout this lesson. Now the CNS is made up of the brain and of the spine, and then the PNS is made up of the sensory and motor nerves. Now all that basically means is these are our senses, and this is where the information goes back out into the body to give us our movement, for example. So if I can just draw a very crude drawing of the nervous system, so that's the brain and that's the spine, so that's the CNS. Then what we've got is, I'm just going to put a very simple diagram. That is someone's eye. Then we would have a sensory nerve that goes from the eye into the brain. And then we would have a motor nerve that goes from the brain down the spinal cord into some leg muscles, for example. And I'll explain why I've done it this way. So what we do is we are thinking about going outside for a walk. So what we do is we go to the window and we look outside. So information from the outside goes into the eye. It's a sunny day and we can see that the sun is out, the sky is blue, and we might even be able to feel that the temperature is warm. So that would be another sense. We can feel that the temperature is warm. So all that information goes into the brain, and then we go about making a decision. So we then decide, okay, the sun is out, the sky is blue, it feels warm. So what we're going to do is we are going to go outside for a walk. So we then go, information goes down through the spinal cord to the muscles of the leg, and our legs start walking outside, or to go outside, and then we walk outside. So that in some respects is the basic structure and function of the nervous system. But what then happens is we have an autonomic, which is over here, and a somatic, which is over here. Now I've just explained the somatic side of the nervous system, conscious control. So we've looked at the information, so we've sensed information, we've decided what we're going to do with that information, and then we've acted upon it. So that is our conscious control. What we've also got is an unconscious control. So this one is slightly different, because if we were to eat some food, it would go down through the stomach and let's just say into the small intestine. Now the small intestine and the stomach will start working to process that food. That is all done via our unconscious control, but the sort of trail of information is the same. The body would sense that food going down into the stomach and into the small intestines. It would then send that information to the brain and spinal cord, or to the spinal cord and the brain, and then it would send information back down as to what to do with it. So it would start processing the food. So that would be the autonomic nervous system. So that is our conscious control and our unconscious control. What then happens is we have a sympathetic and a parasympathetic side of our nervous system. Now, I'm not going to explain those in any more detail right now. I'm going to do that in the final lesson. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go onto the final slide, where we're going to give a little bit more detail about the function. I've already described the basic function of the nervous system in the previous slide, but I'm just going to highlight it once again, and obviously you can see I've got the labels and some sort of brief descriptions of them. So the basic function of this nervous system, now there is more going on within this. As we drill down into it, we start to find out more processes within our sensory nerve. So there's more labels of the sensory nerve, and there's more things going on which can describe the function of it. And the same goes for the central nervous system in interpretation and also response. But let's just try and bring together some of what we've talked about so far. So we talked about we've got a PNS and a CNS. Now, we sense, obviously, through the peripheral nervous system using a sensory nerve. So that's taking information from the sensory organ, the eye, and takes it into the spinal cord or the brain and the brain. And that's an important distinction which I won't describe now, but it doesn't always have to go into the brain. It can only go as far as the spinal cord. Essentially, quick reactions are spinal cord driven, more thoughtful, sort of thought through interpretations and responses are more up into the brain, if that makes sense. But I won't go any further than that. So information goes in through the sensory nerve, which is a part of the PNS. What then happens, that information gets as far, let's just say, as the brain. Now, obviously, the brain and the spinal cord is the CNS that we've talked about already. So we then go about making our decision about what we are going to do. Once we've made that decision, it goes back through the PNS, but then goes back down a motor nerve to tell our muscles or our organ what it wants us to do. So all that basically means, because you can see in here as well, we've got ascending tracts and where's the other one? Descending tracts. Now all that basically means is in the spinal cord, we have nerves that take information up it, and we have nerves that take information down it. So on a very basic level, all we're saying is the sensory nerves are going up and the motor nerves are coming down. So information is being taken in. So that example of that I mentioned about eating, so the sensory nerves would come from the small intestines, go up the spine. Our brain would decide what it wants to do, and then it would send the information back to the small intestine with the actions of what to do. In fact, that should be the other way around because information's going that way. So that is essentially our ascending tract and our descending tract. Again, at a very basic level. But that is the basic structure, basic function of the nervous system. And a few of the other labels have been described there, but hopefully it's just sort of brought it together and gives you a better understanding of the basic structure and the basic function of the nervous system.